Hi ladies, welcome to the Feminine Mystery. My name is Azalea Dawn, and on my channel I talk about leveling up, hypergamy, and getting yourself in the right relationship with a masculine provider for your luxury lifestyle. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please check out the rest of the videos on my channel. And without further ado, let's get started. Today's topic is all about things that you should never tell a man, right? It's about keeping a few secrets. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because in our society, right, we're in a moment that is definitely encouraging women to sort of adopt more masculine behavior and vice versa, right? Men are, being pressured to become more feminine in our society, and women are being pressured to become more masculine. And a part of that, sort of like masculinity is the idea that we should be like open and transparent, honest, simple, straight to the point, right? That we should be like these no-nonsense direct communicators that just put everything out on the table and like we're always communicating with a purpose, right? These very like masculine traits. It's kind of like discouraging the sort of, I guess you could say the social games that a lot of women tend to play, a lot of feminine women tend to play. And I would just like to get a little bit more to the point of, bringing a little bit of that back and starting to talk about like why it is that you should keep a few things to yourself, why it is that you should keep a few secrets and mysteries about yourself. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, ladies, the first thing that we're going to talk about on this list is not sharing the details of your daily routine. Now, I don't want you to take this to be like the most extreme like version of that, right? Like that you're like hiding the details of your day from like your boyfriend or your husband or anything like that. But at the same time, like when you're early on in the dating process, what I want you to pay attention to is the fact that the guys that you're seeing, they're not your boyfriend, they're not your husband, they're not your fiance, they're not somebody that you owe information to. That's first and foremost. So you don't want to put everything on the table and just immediately within like the first, like couple months of just, seeing somebody, they know every single thing that you do every day of your life. They know every place that you've been, every place that you will ever go, everything that you do, right? That is not what you want to do. First and foremost, like when you set these boundaries around, yourself, your time, and your space, you become like a bit more enigmatic, right? You become a bit interesting to other people. When you just kind of like set this boundary and you say, no, you can't have this, right? It entices people to want that more. So when you are with a man and you are just saying that, basically like you're keeping a few things private, you're not exactly being clear about where it is that you were or were not, when that was, it makes him want to spend more time with you. It makes him want to work towards something. It's kind of like, if you have like a dog or something, like playing fetch. I don't mean that in sort of, a degrading way, but the idea that the further you throw the ball, the more incentive you give a dog to chase it. In the same way, like when you don't make it so easy to know every single thing about you, it makes the process of getting to know you more interesting. It makes it more fun. Also, you really need to start thinking about things from like a safety perspective, in my opinion, because again, when you don't really know somebody, when you're in the dating phase with people, especially if you're working, like at volumes, you're getting to know a lot of different men, right? And especially if you're somebody who uses like dating apps or something, which I've made a video on, the strengths and advantages of getting to know men in person, like through your social circle rather than via dating apps. So please check that out on my channel if that sounds interesting for you. But when you're getting to know like a lot of people that you really don't know, right, like you have to be cognizant of the amount of information that you're giving them, because that can be a risk to your physical safety. People who don't really know you like that probably should not know where you live. They probably should not know where you work. Right? It's fine to just tell people what you do or what industry you're in without giving very specific details of where you are, in what building, sitting at what desk, at what times, like that sort of thing, because it can be any kind of person that you're talking to. It could be, a stalker. It could be, somebody who has evil intentions towards you. You never know. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself, both spiritually and, physically, that you are keeping your physical safety in mind. So I would say definitely don't share those details, at least not at first. Now, ladies, the next thing I would say that you should never share is your intimate history. Now, when I say your intimate history, I'm trying to keep things PG, obviously, for YouTube. That said, we're talking about sex, right? We're talking about physical intimacy. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because a lot of times I hear women who are, especially women who are not used to dating more affluent men, like you date men that are more crass, they're very straight to the point, and they ask you questions like, what's your quote-unquote body count? These are things that you never want to respond to with any kind of answer or any kind of information, because the reality, and this is just me being frank, if you have some ideal society that you would like to build on another planet that is not a patriarchy, where genders truly are equal and where women are just as physically liberated as men, if you're going to build like a colony on Mars, let me know. But as far as like our popular society, it is very much a patriarchy that punishes women for having any sort of, bodily autonomy on the same scale as men. If you are somebody as a woman who is out here with like 19 different sexual partners, it makes you seem like an SLUT, whereas if a man does that, it's not even something to blink an eye at, right? And men know this. So when people ask you questions like this, the question is a double-edged sword. No matter what you do, the question in and of itself is designed to degrade you. It is designed to bring you down in his eyes, which is not what you want to do. You don't want to respond to bad behavior with good behavior on your part. You don't want to actually comply with somebody who is trying to disrespect you. And the only way out of this, in my opinion, is to set absolute boundaries around that information, which means giving a non-answer. Now, what is a non-answer, you might be asking? Well, a non-answer, you see this a lot with politicians, with business people who are put in, or business executives who have to answer a very difficult question. They will respond to the question, but they will basically not answer it. So an example of what this looks like is that if somebody asks you what your body count is, you'll say, that's an interesting question. Number one, you don't actually respond to it and be like 2 or 3. No, you just say, well, that's an interesting thing for you to ask. And then from there, you would turn it into maybe something that you ask a question back, right? Where you're saying, well, why would you ask me something like that? Or you can also go with the route of just putting a firm boundary up, right? So if you turn it into a question and you really don't answer, that would be something more like a soft boundary where you're not being as confrontational about not answering. Or you could, just be a little bit more, a more quote unquote aggressive with it and just say, something like, I would only ever be physically intimate with another person in the confines of a loving relationship. That said, I don't talk about the past. Something like that. Where it's just that can be very frustrating, especially to these very low value, low vibration people who are trying to degrade you with this information. But at the end of the day, it's about keeping it classy on your end. And you have to remember that if somebody is constantly pushing you into a direction where you are uncomfortable in a conversation, it's always within your right to just leave the conversation altogether. You don't have to stay with somebody who is trying to disrespect you. So if you say something like, well, that's not something that I'm comfortable talking about, that's not something that I'm comfortable answering, I would appreciate if you did not, probe into my personal history like that. And somebody reacts to that with a lot of negativity or toxicity, it's perfectly within your right to just excuse yourself from the conversation and say hey, I don't think that the way that we're communicating is the most positive, and I think that I'm going to call it for the evening and just go. Either way, it's very important that you just not respond to things like this, and I just wanted to put the PSA out there for that. Now, this next one will be short and sweet, but you shouldn't share any details about your financial life. Now, the reason that I say this for women who are interested in dating affluent men in particular, so this is not for those of you who are dating, like every day, like Joe Schmoes who, like they work and they have to be financially literate, they have to respect their own financial situations, etc. And it is very important for them to understand, like where somebody is coming from in a partnership. If you are dating the affluent, you really don't need to do this. Because again, this is something where there is nothing that could possibly be going on with you financially that could really impact somebody who is quite affluent, right? When somebody has a net worth of, let's say, for example, like $50 million or more, it is not possible for you as, like an everyday ordinary woman to have any sort of debt that would actually act as a sort of like impairment for somebody like this. It is just not relevant to that kind of person to know anything about your financial situation, because like, what's the worst thing that could possibly be there? He can solve that with a snap of his fingers. And like the swipe of a card, whatever. Like, it's just not important. A lot of times what this goes back to the fact that in our current society, like men are being conditioned to become more feminine. Men are starting to become the people who are, especially at the lower levels of society, at the lower social classes, right? Men are starting to become like a little bit more of the quote unquote gold digger. So they are the person who is looking to partner with somebody who is particularly affluent. They are looking to get into a relationship with women who have, the funds to bankroll their lifestyles. And that is why they're trying to size you up very early. And this is especially true of people who have criminal histories, men who have, perhaps had a run-in with the law or two in whatever country that they are from originally. A lot of times they will be sizing you up to see like what sort of like financial payout that they can get from their efforts with you. So it's very important that you just shut this down at the, like from the beginning, and you don't give anybody any leeway there. They don't need to know anything about like your personal financial situation, like how much money you make in a year, how much something that you have on cost, or how much like you paid for a home in a particular area. Any sort of like intimate financial detail, definitely do not give that away. Next, we're going to be talking about why past relationships didn't last, right? So this is a very, popular question when you are just sort of getting to know somebody, especially people that you don't really know, right? A lot of my friends who use like dating apps like Tinder, etc., like they will be in a situation where they're on a date with somebody and they're with a social dater, right? So I've made other videos kind of talking about this theory, but like a social dater is essentially a person who like they just go on dates for fun. They're not really dating for marriage. They date as an extension of their social life. So they just go on a lot of dates, and they will ask questions that are meant for their own entertainment. That are meant for them to sort of like not develop any further relationship with you, but just for them to, like pontificate about with their friends. And, it's just kitchen table talk. It's just interesting for them. So when you start talking about why your past relationships didn't last, it just provides a lot of fodder for this type of person to like psychoanalyze you and start to see like, oh, like this is a pattern in your life, and this is that, and this is that. And it's really just not relevant. A man who is really interested in you is not going to be interested in your past before him. He does not want to hear about, all the like different like failed relationships of your past. He's not thinking, right, that his relationship with you is going to fail, and therefore that's not even on his mind. It's literally just not there, right? A lot of very affluent men in particular, and you will hear them say this themselves, they practice positivity. So they go go into things like literally thinking the most positive things that they can about the situation, and they practice this in very like concrete daily ways, whether it's through like gratitude journals or like whatever. And that is just the reality of it. So like that's just what it takes to build a lot of these, like businesses, etc., that deliver, like 10 million, 50 million, like a lot of the money to these affluent men. It takes a practice of positivity. So he's not going to be asking that in the first place. And the kind of person who is asking this, again, that's a person that you don't want to give any sort of ammunition for them to then go and start talking bad about you to other people. So again, it's just very important that if you're asked a question like this, give them a non-answer. Essentially, just say something like, respond to the question, but don't answer the question. Just say something like, well, I don't really like to talk about the past or dwell in the past, but I will say that, whatever situation that there has been, there's nothing but positivity from my end. Just say something that really doesn't mean anything and then move on. And lastly, ladies, this is a big one: embarrassing stories that you think make you seem relatable. Now, this is something that I don't really understand. I mean, I do literally understand it, but I don't relate to this feeling. A lot of women, like, they struggle with, like imposter syndrome. They feel like they don't really belong in a certain space. And that both happens, in the professional spectrum, if you have women in leadership positions, women who are, like really leveling themselves up in their career paths. They'll feel like, oh, I don't really deserve to be here. I don't, this, I don't have that. They look at all of this negative and they convince themselves that they don't deserve to be where they are. In the same way, when you're leveling up your lifestyle and you are starting to, like traffic in more affluent social circles, right? You're starting to become known and you're starting to live a more luxurious lifestyle through that way. You can also struggle with imposter syndrome, and that can trigger you into this, sort of like a very negative, in my opinion, space where you start to talk badly about yourself in order to, from your perspective, make yourself seem more relatable. So like if somebody is like, oh my God, you look so perfect all the time, I can never look like that, then like what a lot of women will do is they'll start to say, no, I'm this, I'm that, I had this issue and that issue. And, they'll start talking about like how their teeth are falling out and they have like toe fungus. No. You do not want to sort of comfort anybody who needs that sort of thing from you. If somebody is that intimidated where they feel like they are lesser than you, they are the person who is experiencing that feeling, and they have to be the people who sort of release themselves from that, veil of comparison. It's not your burden to make those people feel more comfortable around you, and it's especially not your burden to do that in a way that is self-deprecating. So if you are ever in a situation where you feel the need or you feel the desire to tell some story that is it makes you like it's bringing yourself down, it's self-deprecating, maybe like self-deprecating humor or just anything like that, I would stop yourself in your tracks right there and reevaluate, because it's really not what you want to be doing to get to know people, right? You want people to know the best version of you, and you have so many people, especially in more affluent social circles, who want to get to know the best version of you. They want to be around your most positive and best self, and you, as well as they, like, both deserve that. You deserve mutually to have the most positive experience of each other. So don't stand in your own way with that. Now, ladies, that's going to be it for me today. If you've enjoyed this video, then please leave a like down below and consider subscribing to my channel for more similar content. Please check out the rest of the content on my channel, and I will see you in my next video.